The crowd buzzed with excitement as the grand galactic arena came to life. From all corners of the galaxy, species of every shape and color gathered to witness the combat exhibition, an annual tradition where power, skill, and strategy were displayed not as war, but as celebration. Enormous screens hovered in the sky, broadcasting every detail. The atmosphere pulsed with energy, anticipation thick enough to taste. In the highest seat of honor, Korr'thak the Unbreakable sat, his massive frame practically consuming the throne. His obsidian scales shimmered with iridescent patterns as he adjusted the gleaming shoulder plates of his ceremonial armor. His reputation stretched beyond systems. Undefeated for decades, feared and revered in equal measure. Korr'thak's piercing yellow eyes scanned the floor below, where the competitors were gathered. His gaze passed over towering warriors, vicious creatures bred for battle, beings of pure energy, and serpentine assassins from shadow worlds. All impressive, all worthy. But then, at the very back, nearly lost behind the fanfare and glittering armor, sat a small group of humans. They weren't adorned with glowing exosuits or shimmering battle regalia. They wore simple uniforms, dark navy, with modest insignias. Their faces were calm, expressions unreadable. They didn't chatter amongst themselves or puff up with bravado like the others. They sat with their hands folded or resting on their knees, watching quietly. Korr'thak's brow furrowed. He motioned toward them with one massive clawed hand, his voice carrying effortlessly across the arena. "Why do they sit there?" he asked, his tone somewhere between amusement and condescension. The council steward by his side cleared his throat. "The humans prefer observation before engagement, Great One." Korr'thak's laugh was a booming force, shaking the very pillars of the arena. Beings across the stadium joined in, some with roaring approval, others with polite, nervous chuckles. "Observation," Korr'thak repeated, his fanged smile wide. "Or fear?" His voice lowered, just enough to carry a challenge. The camera drones zoomed in on the human delegation. None of them reacted. They didn't shift in their seats, didn't frown or blush with embarrassment. One woman in particular, seated at the center of the group, simply blinked and continued to watch the arena floor with serene focus. No defiance, no submission, just quiet. Korr'thak's smile faltered for half a second. He turned to the steward. "Have they no champion?" The steward hesitated, glancing down at his data pad. "They have registered competitors, Great One, but none have requested an early match." Korr'thak snorted. "Always hiding." He leaned back, the metal of his throne creaking under his weight. "They should know, strength is not meant to be hidden." His words echoed. In the stands, beings from distant worlds exchanged glances. The humans remained still. The opening ceremonies began, holographic banners unfurling in midair. Trumpets from 6 different species blared in perfect harmony, while the arena's floor panels shifted to create impossible geometric patterns. The announcers, speaking in a chorus of synchronized tongues, introduced champions with grandeur. Beasts roared, banners unfurled, and the arena shook with excitement. But Korr'thak's gaze drifted back, again and again, to the humans. He couldn't help but feel unsettled. After the ceremonies concluded, he leaned forward once more, addressing the steward quietly this time. "I have fought warriors from molten worlds and frozen stars. I have crushed giants, outsmarted tacticians. But these fragile creatures, they sit in silence." "Why?" The steward swallowed nervously. "Some say they possess a different kind of strength, Great One. One not shown until necessary." Korr'thak's eyes narrowed. He didn't like riddles. He liked force. He liked directness. And these quiet beings, sitting so small and still in the vast arena, offered neither. As the first matches were announced, cheers erupted. Korr'thak roared approval, slamming his fist on the armrest, causing shockwaves that rippled through the air. Still, the humans did not stir. Not a smile, not a whisper. Just watching, observing, waiting. For the first time in his long and brutal reign, Korr'thak felt something foreign tightening in his chest. He would not name it. He would not acknowledge it. But deep down, a flicker of curiosity, and perhaps the tiniest spark of apprehension, had begun to grow. He would see soon enough what they were hiding.
The arena floor shimmered, the surface shifting from polished obsidian to a swirling field of energy as the first match was announced. The crowd roared, banners waving, holograms of the combatants displayed in giant projections across the sky. Leaned forward on his throne, eager for the spectacle to begin. His eyes gleamed as the announcer's voice thundered through the arena, calling forth of a warrior nearly as massive as himself, with muscles bulging like cold steel cables and fists the size of boulders. The cheers that followed shook the arena walls. Stepped onto the platform with a smug confidence, raising his arms to accept the adoration of the crowd. He pounded his chest once, the sound echoing like thunder. Then came the second name, and a strange hush fell over the arena. Lieutenant Mara Solis of Earth. The crowd hesitated. Then laughter bubbled up in pockets. A few beings exchanged confused glances. Brow furrowed in annoyance. He turned toward the humans section in the back. From their ranks, a lone figure stood. A woman. Small by comparison, slender and unarmored. She didn't wear a grand cape or carry weapons. No shield, no show of power. Just a simple, dark navy uniform with subtle silver trim and the insignia of Earth's delegation on her breast. She walked calmly down the stairs toward the arena floor. No fanfare. No hesitation. Sneered. They send me a snack. His deep rumble caused laughter throughout the stands. Mara didn't respond. Her expression was unreadable, almost serene. Scowl deepened. He felt that flicker of unease again. The two combatants stood before each other, the difference in size almost laughable. Flexed his arms, veins pulsing, stone skin hardening as his natural armor engaged. Mara simply bowed her head once, hands at her sides. The bell sounded. Surged forward like an avalanche, fists raised, roaring his battle cry. In less than a breath, it was over. He was on the floor, unconscious, face buried in the energy field. The silence was absolute. The entire arena froze, jaws slack, breaths caught. Sat motionless, unable to process what had happened. Mara Solis stood exactly where she had been, her hands still at her sides, not even a wrinkle on her uniform. The announcer stammered, struggling to regain composure. Lieutenant Mara Solis of Earth. The declaration barely registered through the stand hush. Slowly, murmurs began to ripple through the audience. Disbelief. Confusion. The grand champion narrowed his eyes. Was no fool, no weakling. What had she done? He replayed the moment in his mind. No visible attack, no energy burst. Just a blur of movement faster than the eye could track and, collapsing like a felled tree. Mara turned without fanfare and ascended the stairs, rejoining the other humans. They greeted her with nods, no clapping, no cheers. Just acknowledgement. Fists clenched. He felt a tremor of something unfamiliar. It wasn't fear. He refused to call it that. But it gnawed at the edge of his mind. The matches continued. One after another, human competitors were called to the floor. Each time, they were faced with warriors from powerful worlds, beings known for their ferocity, speed, strength, or element manipulation. Each time, the human stepped forward calmly. Each time, their opponent fell in seconds, sometimes before the crowd even realized the fight had begun. The audience shifted from laughter to awe, from awe to unease, and finally to silence. Heart pounded heavier with each match. These humans weren't using brute force. They weren't displaying dazzling energy or showy power. They moved with purpose, economy, and an eerie kind of elegance. Every strike was precise. Every motion carried intent, nothing wasted. They fought without arrogance, without celebration. They simply ended battles. And then sat back down. The camera drones began focusing more on the human delegation, hoping to capture some reaction, some emotion. But their faces remained calm, focused, as though none of this surprised them. Felt his confidence slipping. He had dismissed them as weak, unworthy of attention. Now, he couldn't take his eyes off them. Finally, an announcement echoed that made his blood run colder than any battlefield had ever done. The final exhibition match. The Unbreakable versus General Reyes of Earth. Rose to his feet slowly, the entire arena falling silent. His massive steps thundered as he descended into the arena. Across from him, another human stepped forward. General Reyes. Older than Mara, perhaps in his 50s, with graying hair and calm, steady eyes. No armor. No weapon. Just a uniform. throat tightened. He couldn't understand why. But for the first time in his long reign, he felt doubt.
The arena fell into a silence so complete it felt like the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Korr'thak stood in the center of the combat floor, the energy field beneath him humming quietly. His massive frame, usually the embodiment of unshakable strength, felt heavier than ever. Across from him stood General Reyes of Earth. The human was unarmed, dressed simply in that same understated Navy uniform, hands relaxed at his sides. His expression was unreadable, steady calm, without challenge or fear. Korr'thak's mind churned. He had battled titans, faced monsters born from black holes, creatures that could dissolve entire worlds. But none of them had made him feel this strange tension in his chest. He told himself it was irritation. Nothing more. He took a deep breath, his chest expanding like a mountain rising. The crowd was hushed. Across the arena, beings from worlds far and strange stared wide-eyed, some whispering among themselves, others frozen in disbelief. The bell rang, clear and sharp. Korr'thak exploded forward, faster than most beings his size could manage, his movements honed by centuries of combat. His right fist swung down with devastating force, aiming to crush this fragile human and end the spectacle quickly. But Reyes wasn't there. Korr'thak's punch met only air, the force of it cracking the arena floor. He spun, looking for his opponent. Reyes stood behind him, calm, still. Korr'thak roared and charged again. This time, he used strategy, feints, deceptive movements. Each attack met nothing but space. Reyes moved like water, effortless, never rushed. Not even countering. Just observing. Korr'thak's breathing grew heavier. He was used to fights ending quickly. He crushed his enemies without hesitation. This was different. He was growing tired, his strikes wild, less precise. And Reyes still hadn't struck him once. Korr'thak lunged forward with a final, desperate attack. In that moment, Reyes moved. A simple shift, a single palm placed gently on Korr'thak's chest, and all the champion's weight, strength, and momentum collapsed inward. He stumbled, lost balance, and before he could process what had happened, he was on his knees, gasping for breath. The arena was silent. Reyes stood before him, hands at his sides, looking down not with smugness or mockery, but with quiet understanding. Korr'thak looked up into those calm human eyes and saw patience. Kindness, even. Not arrogance. Not victory. Just acceptance of the outcome. Korr'thak wanted to rage, to fight, to roar, but the fight was gone. He knew it. Everyone watching knew it. The announcer's voice cracked as it echoed across the arena. The winner, General Reyes of Earth. The silence in the stands was deep and heavy. Then murmurs, whispers spreading like ripples through water. Korr'thak slowly stood, his breath ragged. He stared at Reyes. "You could have ended me," he said quietly. His voice didn't boom this time. It trembled. Reyes nodded once. That was never the point. Korr'thak felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He had spent a lifetime proving strength with force, with domination. The humans proved theirs with control, with restraint, with understanding. Korr'thak turned, looking up at the stands where his people watched in stunned silence. He raised his fist not in anger, but in salute, and the crowd slowly followed, raising their hands, claws, tendrils, and appendages in reluctant but growing respect. The humans had not come to boast. They had not come to conquer. They had come to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten. True strength lies in knowing exactly when not to use it. Reyes bowed his head slightly to Korr'thak and then turned, walking back up the steps to his delegation. They greeted him the same way they had greeted every other competitor. A nod, a shared glance of mutual respect, nothing more. No cheering. No self-congratulation. Korr'thak stood alone in the arena, feeling small for the first time in his life. The crowd remained quiet. Not out of fear, but reverence. The galaxy's strongest warrior had been bested by something far greater than muscle or might. He had been bested by mastery. As he climbed back up to his throne, he felt every step heavy with understanding. The humans returned to their quiet seats in the back row, exactly as they had started, watching the rest of the matches unfold. They did not move to the front. They did not demand recognition. They simply sat, content, having made their point without a word. Korr'thak sat down heavily, staring at them from across the vast arena. He would never laugh at them again.
The arena had been silent long after the final match ended. The echoes of the impossible victory lingered in the minds of every species present. Korr'thak, once hailed as the unbreakable titan of the galaxy, sat in quiet reflection, his pride cracked but not shattered. He had learned something that day, something far more valuable than any title. The humans had returned to their seats without celebration, without claiming dominance. Their lesson had been delivered not through words or spectacle, but through calm demonstration. The galaxy was watching, and whispers spread across systems faster than light. Stories of Earth's quiet strength, their mastery of control, and their refusal to flaunt power began to ripple through diplomatic channels, military councils, and trading alliances. Weeks passed. Delegations requested audience with Earth. Species that had once dismissed humans as insignificant now studied their history, their culture, and most importantly, their restraint. In the great halls of diplomacy, Korr'thak found himself sitting across from General Reyes once again, not on the battlefield, but at a negotiation table. The chamber was grand, filled with banners from 100 worlds, shimmering with golden light. Korr'thak removed his ceremonial armor, choosing instead to wear simple garments. He had learned the importance of humility. Reyes sat across from him, relaxed but attentive. They spoke little at first, only exchanging respectful glances. It was Korr'thak who broke the silence. "Why do you not take what you could so easily have?" he asked, his voice quieter, filled with genuine curiosity rather than challenge. Reyes folded his hands on the polished table. "Because strength without purpose becomes tyranny," he answered. Korr'thak absorbed those words. He had always associated strength with dominance, conquest, and display. The humans saw it as responsibility. "We sit at the back," Reyes continued, "because we listen. We observe. The moment you sit in the front, the moment you crave the spotlight, you become too loud to hear what matters." Korr'thak nodded slowly. Across the room, other delegations watched the exchange, learning from both. Trade agreements shifted. Military alliances formed not through force, but mutual understanding. The galaxy's greatest warrior had found a new kind of respect, not from fear, but from wisdom. He became an advocate for balance, urging others to rethink their understanding of strength. Months later, in the capital of the Galactic Council, a monument was erected. It did not tower over the city. It was modest, placed at the edge of the Grand Plaza where the crowds would pass it, not stand beneath it. The inscription read, "The strongest among us sit quietly, for they already know." The statue was of a simple bench with figures seated, heads bowed in conversation, eyes open to the world around them. No weapons, no armor, just presence. Korr'thak visited that monument often. One day, he found Reyes there, sitting quietly on the bench the statue represented. Korr'thak sat beside him. They didn't speak for a long time. Children from distant worlds played around them, their laughter carrying across the plaza. Traders haggled, diplomats conversed, life moved forward. Korr'thak finally spoke, his voice soft. "You have changed the galaxy." Reyes shook his head with a small smile. "We reminded it." Korr'thak looked around, seeing the subtle changes that had begun to ripple through society. Less boasting, more listening, fewer parades of strength and more displays of cooperation. When Korr'thak returned to his homeworld, his people expected grand stories of combat and victory. Instead, he told them stories of restraint, of balance, of wisdom. He taught young warriors not only how to strike, but when not to. Across the galaxy, others followed suit. Earth became a respected voice in the council chambers. Not feared, not envied, respected. They continued to sit in the back, watching, listening, guiding when asked. And when the next galactic exhibition was announced, all eyes turned to the human delegation. This time, the announcers did not laugh. Competitors did not smirk. They nodded with solemn respect. And once again, the humans sat in the back row. Quiet. Waiting. Watching. The opening ceremony commenced, filled with bright displays and roaring crowds. But when the time came to call forth the first competitor from Earth, they declined. The announcer faltered. The crowd hushed. A message was sent from the human delegation, broadcast to all, "We have shown what we are. Now, show us what you can become." The arena was silent. Then, slowly, applause erupted, not for dominance, but for wisdom shared. Korr'thak watched from his own seat, not in the throne but among the delegations. He clapped, smiling for the first time without pride or arrogance, but with gratitude. the galaxy's strongest, had once asked why humans sit in the back. Now, they all understood. And they would never forget.